London, area Enfield. The end of the 1970s. The city lived its usual life. The children played in the yards, the neighbors chatted about prices and politics, and the families returned home in the evening to hide from the cold English wind. But outside the doors of one inconspicuous house at 284 Green Street, something that would continue to become one of the most famous and terrible mystical stories of the 20th century. The main characters of the events was the Hodgson family. The widow of Peggy Hodgson brought up 4 children: 13-year-old Margaret, 11-year-old Janet, 10-year-old Johnny, and 7-year-old Billy. Their life was not easy. There was barely enough money. The house was old and cold. But nothing foreshadowed that soon the usual family existence would turn into a nightmare that shocks the whole of Great Britain. The first oddities, August 1977. It all started with the fact that the children complained to their mother. Their beds creak and move themselves. At first, Peggy decided that it was a children's fantasy or a prank. But soon she became a witness to the inexplicable. The furniture in the house began to move without the participation of people. The cabinets moved a few centimeters, the chairs bounced, and the toys seemed to come to life. In one of the nights, Peggy heard a loud knock. Rising into the room of her daughters, she saw a heavy chest of drawers slowly moving along the floor. The attempt to return it to the place was unsuccessful. The chest of drawers seemed to resist, as if an invisible force held him. A frightened woman brought the children out into the street and knocked on the neighbors. The neighbors called the police. 2 officers arrived at the place and themselves witnessed the oddities. One of them claimed that he saw how the chair rose above the floor and shifted several meters. This episode later entered the official police report. The attention of the press and the first researchers' history quickly spread throughout the district, and then throughout England. Journalists began to come to the house. The Daily Mirror newspaper was the first to publish materials about the strange house on Green Street. Soon, representatives of the Society for Mental Research (SPR) joined the investigation. Among them was the researcher Maurice Grosse, who lost his own daughter shortly before. He became one of the main witnesses and researchers of the Enfield Poltergeist. Together with his colleague Gay Lyon Playfair, he conducted observations in the house almost daily. Grosse and Playfair recorded dozens of strange phenomena. Objects took off into the air and fell in different rooms. Knocks and blows came from the walls. There were low, unnatural voices emanating from Janet. It was especially frightening that the 11-year-old girl sometimes began to speak in a rude, masculine voice, introducing herself as Bill, a man who allegedly died in this house. Levitation and photo signature. One of the most famous evidence was photographs taken by reporters and researchers. At them, the Janet seemed to fly into the air, falling out of the bed, or hanged a few centimeters above the floor. The skeptics claimed that the girl was just jumping, but those who were nearby assured it looked completely different. Every day, the atmosphere in the house became harder. The family was exhausted by constant noise and attacks of invisible power. Janet was several times blocked on furniture or stuck in strange positions, as if someone had been holding it. The first doubts. Despite the fact that many witnesses confirmed what was happening, doubts began to appear. Some journalists suspected that children could adjust the tricks for the sake of attention. Several times they were caught that they threw objects themselves. But even in such cases, the researchers argued, it is impossible for everything to be falsification. Too many events took place with adult witnesses, including police officers. Meanwhile, the Hodgson family was getting tired of what was happening more and more. The house turned into a place where it was impossible to sleep and live calmly. It seemed that with each month the forces hiding in the house at 284 Green Street became more aggressive. If in the beginning it was knocking and moving objects, then later the phenomena took on a more frightening character. The neighbors and researchers who spent the nights in the house claimed they heard sharp blows, voices, and even saw how objects appeared out of nowhere and fell in the rooms. Janet suffered especially strongly. In her presence, the most events took place. She fell out of bed. Her body was bending in unnatural poses, and it seemed as if something tried to master her body. Some witnesses stated that they saw how the girl raised invisible hands and threw it on the bed. In one case, it was found locked on the closet, and it took several adults to remove it. The most terrible element was the speech emanating from Janet. her voice changed, becoming low, hoarse, not like childhood. He introduced himself as Bill Wilkins, a man who allegedly died in this house, sitting in a chair in the living room. Maurice Grosse and Guy Playfair recorded dozens of hours of these conversations. Threatening and rude phrases made in a voice, which could not be confused with the voice of the child, are heard on the films. Skeptics believed that Janet could strain the vocal cords and speak in a special way. But the doctors claimed the child physically could not support such a voice for so long without damaging the ligament. When the story became widely known, not only scientists, but also priests began to come to the house. Enough rituals were carried out. However, nothing changed. Peggy Hodgson complained that the phenomena only intensified after such rituals. Sometimes the house seemed quiet, but after a few days or weeks, strange forces returned with new power. The history of the Enfield house divided the society into two camps. Some believed in the authenticity of events, leading to the proof of photography, records, and evidence of dozens of eyewitnesses. Others believed that everything that was happening was the result of the imagination of children, stress and desire for attention from the press. Newspapers published articles with screaming headlines. Television invited researchers and psychologists, and the Hodgson family itself turned into an object of universal attention. By the end of 1979, activity gradually declined. Strange events still took place, but not so often and not so frightening. Janet later recalled that everything ended as unexpectedly as it began. The family continued to live in the house, although the shadow of these events haunted them for many more years. Until now, the dispute about the authenticity of the Enfield Poltergeist remains open. Skeptics claim that photos with Levitation Janet are easily explained by ordinary jumps, and the Bill voice is the result of a special manner of speaking. However, researchers like Maurice Grosse were convinced something happened in the house that could not be explained. He devoted the rest of his life to the study of this case, considering him one of the most reliable evidence of the existence of paranormal forces. The history of the Enfield house has become one of the most famous mystical chronicles of the 20th century. She inspired books, documentary films, television programs, and even the Hollywood horror The Conjuring 2, where Ed and Lorraine Warren are presented as participants in the investigation. Until now, the house at 284 Green Street attracts the attention of tourists and fans of terrible stories. Modern residents say that nothing unusual in it happens. But those who witnessed the events of 1977 to 1979 are sure. This place will forever remain one of the most mysterious in England. Junet, after years, gave an interview in which she admitted, yes, sometimes she and her sister really played along and played situations. But she also claimed that 80% of the phenomena were real and could not be adjusted. I know what I saw. I know how I felt. And no skeptics will be able to erase it from my memory, said Janet in an interview. The story of the Enfield Poltergeist remains a mystery to this day. She balances between reality and mysticism, forcing to think, what if there is really a world that is hidden behind the line of familiar perception?